Hello and welcome to a cracking off-season special of a podcast this week that takes us into the mind of British-born, US-based triathlon coach Ian O'Brien. Bringing the lessons learned from his military background to the world of high-performance sport, he reveals his key leadership principles, the importance of his athletes having a growth mindset, and why developing tacticians is as important as raw athleticism. His passion pours out of him, as evidenced by his roster's achievements recently, and the mantras he lives by will stick in your head for good. I hope you enjoy it. On the latest episode of the World Triathlon podcast, we welcome the man behind the Origin Performance Training Group, Ian O'Brien. Ian moved to America in 2012, working as a volunteer coach in the US Military Academy, before getting snapped up by USAT to join the Elite Triathlon Academy at the Olympic Training Center. From that experience, he's been working with some of the best in the business, developing his own training group that currently includes the likes of Taylor Knibb, Victoria Lopez, Eli Hemming and Matt McElroy, as well as guest athletes including the Olympic and world champion Flora Duffy. Ian, welcome. Where and how are you?
Hi, Doug. Yeah, I'm in Boulder, Colorado right now, and I'm doing really well, thank you.
Excellent. How is Boulder this time of year? Cold?
It's a bit chilly, but Boulder's kind of a funny place. It's got its own microclimate, so it may be pretty chilly, but it's really sunny pretty much most of the time. So I don't walk out the door and feel like I'm in Yorkshire in the middle of the winter. It's not so dull. It's actually really, really bright there, so it's really, really nice.
So, and since you moved in 2012, is that right? You've been in Colorado that whole time? I mean, Boulder is the Olympic Training Center and so on for the US, isn't it?
So I first moved to New York because I worked at United States Military Academy at West Point as a coach for a few years, and then I moved to Colorado. I actually moved to Colorado Springs because that's the location for the US Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. So I lived there for 4 years, I think, and then I moved to Boulder several years ago, and that's kind of where I base my group out of now, pretty much full time, unless we're doing camps around the world or moving from race to race. My
knowledge of American geography going a few holes. Yeah, so the Olympic Training Center, Colorado Springs, is all manner of sports, is it? Do you get much kind of crossover with the other residents there?
Yeah, I don't live there anymore. The time I spent there, though, was awesome, and I still work heavily with especially sports science and sports medicine there, and they do a fantastic job. But yeah, there's multiple sports there. There's actually several training centers in the United States. You've got one in Lake Placid. There's a small one in Utah. There's one in California as well, which is mainly like track and field. The one in Colorado Springs focuses on pentathlon, weightlifting, boxing, gymnastics, swimming, triathlon. What else? There's all sorts of sports going on. It's kind of like a little village, actually. It's really, really cool. I think I pride myself on building good relationships with service providers, sports specialists, and other coaches. You know, you learn from everybody, and I'm always learning all the time. I pride myself on being a growth type of individual. I'm still learning every single day. I'm not a traditionalist. I kind of operate in a very, I wouldn't say unconventional, but not in a traditional manner. I'm always consistently learning, and being in a location like Colorado and being close to the springs and working with those people there, you come across all sorts of people with all sorts of ideas, and it's shared quite freely. I think it's at the end of the day, it's for the betterment of athletes and medal performance. And so having, I have mentors and sports specialists from all sorts of different sports and with medal potential and medal performing backgrounds. So that helps me massively in approaching things. It's not just about physiology and the everyday running of things. It's like the mindset type of stuff and everything that really, all the other small ingredients that you don't really hear about, which actually kind of help. And you pick up things all the time, and especially on an operational kind of wavelength, if you like how you actually do business. What is the best way to do it? And that combined with my previous background kind of helps me with my leadership principles, which I instill and help develop in my athletes to help them succeed and kind of develop their own autonomy and go out and achieve their own goals. So it's an awesome place. with awesome stuff. So yeah. That was a
Awesome
long
sporting
explanation.
stuff.
I kind of went off on a tangent there. That was a long explanation of it's just so exciting. Like the passion behind it and the passion behind the people there is phenomenal. Really is.
Yeah. To be able to tap into that kind of specialist knowledge must be absolutely invaluable. Even if you're not using the actual specifics, then just different ways of analyzing things, of looking at things. And was that a period then that you learned more during that short time there than in other formative places that you've been?
I think it's almost the same as how coaches talk to athletes about the process. So the coaches go through a process too. So we're constantly growing and getting better all the time. Well, good coaches are anyway, I like to think. And so from the principles and values and standards instilled in me in my military experience, and then moving over into a coaching world, which is, even in the military, as you move up through your rank, you end up coaching your soldiers anyway. So I've been coaching as well, like sports, since I was 21. So I think as time goes by, you pick up things and little nuggets of information and just really cool ways of doing things. But you also come up with, and I think this is something that is really important, is you start to develop experiences. And as you go through those experiences, some things that you attempt, you fail, and that's okay. You can learn from it and gain growth. But that experience through time just provides you with wisdom. And I think that wisdom is kind of what athletes look towards. They want to have coaches who have that kind of depth of experience and knowledge and the same growth mindset as themselves to kind of like push themselves forward and achieve goals. So yeah, that was definitely one of the places that helped me massively, just understanding the high performance circle and other methodologies to support athletes in their goals, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all cumulative, isn't it? You just sort of bolt things on to experienced knowledge you've already got, or things that you just never think might be useful. Suddenly you're like, okay, this is applicable here. And presumably, I mean, you could be a successful triathlon coach well into your 60s and 70s, right? And indeed potentially getting better that whole time, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's some really good coaches out there who are in their 60s, and some even older. So in various sports, yeah, absolutely. I think, like experience over time breeds confidence. So yeah, like absolutely, some of the best coaches are generally guys who've been around and have some knowledge. There's some amazing thrusting young coaches, and that's something that I try and help promote. Like it's good to see new people up and coming and developing new ideas, and it's few and far between in triathlon, especially at the elite level. It's such a difficult place to get into and to kind of like be consistent and identify talent and then develop that talent to the next level, or take on talent that's already in existence and polish diamonds, if you like, to get them to the very top. There's definitely a hard challenge, but that's why I believe experience and wisdom actually play a huge part in this, and having people to hold you accountable and ask questions. If you've got people you can talk to about things that you've not come across before, you'll always learn something new. And I learn something new all the time. I learn things from some of my most inexperienced athletes all the time. It's really, really interesting, because coaching isn't just about delivering physiological prescription. It's also about people, and that is the biggest part of this. You're trying to combine the scientific data and everything else that you know and that you research and things that you experiment with, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that's how you grow. That combined with actually how to apply it, how to develop relationships, more importantly, trust, and therefore belief. Like having athletes believe in what you do is a huge part of what we do, because that gives them something to push off. My analogy is, for me as a coach, I'm basically a rock. Like I'm a guider, I'm a collaborator, and I'm a rock. So if an athlete is doing really, really well, and let's say gets their first World Series podium, and they're all, super happy and high-fiving and all that good stuff, and I'm a pretty much a stoic. So they'll come up and give me a sweaty hug, which is always terrible. But I'm kind of like, okay, great, well done. Right, now we've got to do better. This is what we've got to do. And then they move on. And my job is not. I celebrate. Don't get me wrong, like absolutely. But my job is I like to be that rock. And it's the same if people don't do well. If they don't do well, they come to me and they're like, oh, that didn't go well. Okay, no dramas. Now we got to do better. So the outcome is always the same. We're always moving forward. My job is just to be that stable point in time to enable them to push off and to be reliable, to be trustworthy, to live and breathe the same values and standards that I instill in my athletes and help develop their own leadership principles, if you like, and their autonomy to get the job done, developing, those kinds of things, self-discipline and accountability, so they can go and do their job. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly didn't mean to sound like, you hit 60 or 70 and you can't possibly do the job anymore. But I suppose more meant in the context of, where you are in your career, it's like there's still so much that you could, you could feel like you're, you're obviously capable of developing world champions, but at the same time, that might only happen in 10 years time, or that might, to right. have that kind of period of knowing that, this feels great now, but, it could get even better and there'll be bumps in that road. But a good place to be in, I presume. And a lot of it is obviously fed by this relentless churn of talent that's coming through that you've got to be on top of as well.
Yeah. And I think you hit on a good point there is, and this is a thing with new up and coming coaches coming into this, and where I was a few years ago, is you through those experiences, you start to develop new processes and ways of doing things. But one thing you seem to realize, or I've realized a lot, and this is something I don't really talk to people much about, is, and I have the same thing. I think there is some characteristics about athletes which that ring true for the types of people who actually get to that very, very top level. And even when they get there, it's an interesting thing, and people's goals change all the time. And, for example, going through the COVID period, it was really just even getting to a race. Can we get to a race? Like, is this even going to happen? And that becomes the goal. And we're preparing for that as best we can, but we have to be flexible. A really, really important principle or, thing to think about with flexibility in especially in this job. And we may not even get there. So we've got to continually move in goals, but then when we get there, the goal is then achieved, and then we're moving on to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. So that could be something as easy as, or as basic as, getting through the COVID period, getting to a race, or winning a World Cup, or winning a World Series, or winning an Olympic medal, or whatever it is. And it's really interesting because I found, and I have the same thing myself, is that even though you've done that, and this is a big goal, you get there, the goal happens. Now what? You're moving forward. You're not going, oh my God, I've made it. This is it. Great. I'm satisfied. There's always this constant thirst for this satisfaction and these achievement of goals, which I don't think ever actually materializes. I think as elite athletes and coaches, you're constantly moving forward. You may achieve something, you're really happy with it, and you learn from it. But I think those people I've worked with who really, really continue to keep performing are people who are never satisfied. And I think that's the same way I am as a coach. I want the very best for my athletes. I'll do everything and go above and beyond all the time and dig deep. And that's the same thing with athletes who are that successful. So yeah, like, interesting, but and it's not. It sounds a bit depressing, really. Like, you're not going to be happy with it, but it's not. It's actually fantastic, because when you sit back at the end of the season, you look back, you go, oh my God, look at what's happened. Like, this is amazing. When I look back at my career over the last 7 or 8 years as an elite coach, and I look at all the steps that my athletes over the years have performed and the effect that I've had as a coach, it's like phenomenal. And that's what it is for me, is to see and be part of something bigger than myself, and seeing people actually grow and develop, and knowing I've had a small part in that is just amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, in that case, let's talk about Matt McElroy and Leeds, and that first podium in a World Series that he achieved. Seeing that sheer delight, and then that sense, I spoke to him shortly after in Nursultan at the World Cup there, and there was no sense that he was anything like satisfied with that. There was absolute delight and everything, and you could see that as he crossed the line, and he obviously felt that this was a huge moment. But it was like, right, next. Did you see when those subsequent training sessions and so on? Was he back and hitting it harder than ever? Did you notice a little switch in him?
No, I think, to be honest, I think it was more, it just elevates that belief process. Really, it was more a case of, okay, we're obviously doing something right here. This works, and okay, let's keep doing it. I think there's a lot of people who start doing really well and start performing and then start changing things. And I think that's the key thing. I think especially going into things like an Olympic Games, or for Matt going into, because the races he had after that, he had like 3 World Cup wins back to back. And it was really just, okay, what worked? What was it that worked? And it wasn't just the physiology and the training and everything. It was the mental approach, how you reduce and relieve anxiety, and how you deal with pressure, and more importantly, how you take it on and how you want to affect the battle. Like, what can I do rather than being a passenger in the race? I want to be a player in the race. I want to have an effect on this. I want to be, I want to come out the other side of this race and having an outcome that's actually been driven by me and not just me following other people. And I think that's something we breed in training, and I think he continued to do that throughout the season. And I think once you get to that point, I think it really helps. And we have a process, kind of a belief process that we follow. And I think that's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's one of the ingredients, because there's many ingredients to this, but the aim for me is to push people, and I don't mean to push them into they're in the hurt locker or anything, or make it an uncomfortable situation. Although being comfortable with being uncomfortable is part of sport. Things are never easy. If you want to achieve things, you have to push yourself. But if you put people in a position where they have to be bold and they have to, take control of their own destiny, if you like, including in training sessions or in races, and you breed that in training, then it's going to come out in races. And I think that's what happened with Matt in those races specifically. And so what we do is, like, sometimes there'll be sessions and we're like, oh, this is quite a tough looking session. So, and it might not be achievable. It might not seem achievable. My goal is to push them. So, like, okay, look at it like this. Let's say it's an example, a swim. We'll break the swim down and we go through each individual part. And I want you to focus on specific things within that. So we're compartmentalizing even down to the micro level, even including in sessions. And we're focusing on the each individual strengths and weaknesses as we do it. And then what looks like a really hard workout to start with, because they've broke it down and they're focusing on staying in the moment and focusing on what's happening right now, not worrying about the end of the swim set or how you felt because you've done a session earlier in the day. You can't change the past. You can only change the future by living in the present. So once you do that and you're bold in that and you repeat that, so you go through the process. It's happened so many times where the whole group has looked at a swim workout, and it's usually swims where it happens. You're like, wow, that's just looks like it's going to be a bit cheeky. And so, and they get through it and get to the other end, and like they're all like I'm not a big fan of high-fiving. That's not my thing, but they're all like high-fiving, having a good time. I'm like, this is fantastic, because one of the obviously fundamentals of what we do is making things fun. But they've achieved it, but they've done it by being bold. And then my job then is to repeat that. Repeat being bold. Repetition creates belief. Belief creates confidence. Confidence enables control. Once you're in control, you can then develop capability. And that's kind of my job. And that's kind of what Matt did in those races and continues to do. So once you've got that way of thinking, and it's something I use in races, many coaches use different things and cues for athletes, and every athlete's different. Like I coach every athlete, not completely different, but very, very differently. Everyone's got different approaches, and it's a collaboration between me and each individual person. But generally in a race, a cue word is, are you in control? Stay in control, because that's a systems check to look at yourself and go, am I doing am I being the best me right now in this moment? Am I overcooking this? Am I being bold? Am I taking a risk? Am I pushing myself to the next level? Am I making sure I'm setting the conditions for my success? So these are questions they'll ask themselves. It all sounds very serious, but it's actually good fun. And when you break it down into sessions and you go over it and come out at the end, it's actually great. Like, it sounds all really, really serious, but everything's like pretty chill in essence. It's just really just a way of just getting through the process and having that. And I think, specifically with Matt, from his getting a silver medal in Leeds and then going on through other races after that, was because he was just following that process, and we were just really repeating what worked for him. So yeah.
I was going to ask about how your psychological versus the physical sort of training, like, do you have almost classroom sessions where you work specifically on the psychological side of things? Then you came out with some absolute wonderful little nuggets there that made it quite clear that you're you can inspire people in not very many words, I would imagine. I guess, how much do you work on the psychological side of it just on its own? So, you're not in the pool or you're not on the track or whatever. It's like, right, today we're going to do an hour or 2 hours of being in the moment and keeping that clear head when it's important. And when Matt found himself, ahead of Javi Gomez and whatever in Leeds, what were the tools that you were confident that he had, that you'd given him, that he was about to convert that really strong position?
I think in all honesty, he had them tools himself. My job is to bring them out. I think that's with most people who achieve really good things at a high level. But I think it was all about being in control. I think once he started to see that things were working, it almost gives him that elevated level of confidence and that he's in control. I think that's really it. Like, and then just taking a risk, like being bold. I think I mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of racers who are phenomenal, like absolutely amazing. Some people are passengers, and some people will actually affect the bat. They will go out there and do something tactically. They're a bit more tactically minded. It's something we do in training as well, and it's pretty low key, but we'll add certain things to training sessions. So actually, I will take every opportunity I can, not just the physiological side of training and that training stimulus and prescription, but also adding in, okay, now we're going to think about A, B, C, and D, like adding tactics to it. Because my job is to develop tacticians so that they can go out and use the things that we've developed physiologically effectively. So you've got to be able to read the race. You've got to be able to have situational awareness. You've got to be able to take opportunity. And we have a military term, we call it actions on. So depending on what is happening within the race, we will, and this is something Matt does, and other athletes I coach do the same thing. We develop that. Everybody's slightly different, but, we'll also make opportunity. So it's not just about, okay, this is the race and this is where I'm at and this is what I have to do. Like, no, like, what do I want to achieve out of this? What is my capability? Where do I stand against the rest of my competitors? What strengths do I have as an individual to use to enable me to have an effect upon them, whether that's working with them in a group to push forward, to break away or whatever, or to actually use attrition as a tactic to kind of wear people down because you're going to run faster or whatever it's going to be. So several different methodologies depending on and each athlete is different, and because everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. My job is to identify those, to develop those, to work on those weaknesses or areas of growth. They're massive, but especially if they're a really good athlete, like trying to capitalize on the areas where they're not strong is kind of something that really, really brings people forward. So in terms of the mental approach, it's really just giving people tools to do a job, and in terms of the psychology of what we do, I think I'm not a psychologist. I've studied, but I don't use specific psychological approaches to it. I use like a more of a mental mindset approach to it. And so when I deal with most of my athletes have psychologists themselves, and those psychologists are generally 9 times out of 10 are used for reducing anxiety and for dealing with pressure and to give people strategies to do those sorts of things, especially when you're traveling around the world and having to execute, like keeping yourself nice and level and as calm as possible, but effective. My job is to develop a tactical mentality to be bold and to actually take opportunity and to create opportunity. So I do that in training, and then psychologists will deal with all the other stuff.
So who's the most sort of natural tactician that you've worked with, do you think, who kind of takes that sort of thing on board, and equally can you reach the top if you're not necessarily the best swim bike runner, but tactically you have a certain edge, and equally if you're just a pure swim, bike, runner, can you do it without any tactical nous whatsoever?
Oh, that's a hard question. Yeah, I don't. I think no.
Don't say it's a bit of everything, because I'm not.
I was going to say that, but I can't, right? So I don't know. I think it also depends on the race, because no race is the same. Like courses are different. Different people have got different strengths and weaknesses. You know, like Abu Dhabi, for example, is superior bike handling. You know, really short critical power, and really come into play. Whereas other races like Edmonton, for example, is like long. You know, it's not a very technical course, but it is a very like power orientated course, but not so much higher numbers. It's more consistently higher numbers, but a lower range. So yeah, I don't know.
Are there people? Okay. So that was a slightly banana skin of a question. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't answer that one.
But are there people that you have worked with that you have maybe dissected a race with them afterwards and gone, oh, I've never heard anyone think about it in that way, or that have brought certain things to you as a coach that have made you sit up and take it on board and use it?
I'll be honest, I think they all do. Like every one of my athletes does that. Like if we sit down and do a race review, generally we don't do it straight away. We'll do it a little bit of time, so they have some time to reflect, but we'll either do a race report or sit down, talk about it, or watch the race on Triathlon Live, like a replay, and just go over, okay, this is what happened. And it generally only happens if the athlete's at the front, because they get more footage. So it's a lot more useful. And that's obviously something I push quite heavily, is being at the front of the course. But yeah, so everyone does that, and I learn from them. I would say this last year, Taylor Knibb was a standout in that regard. Her tactical development this year was phenomenal. So from the beginning of the year, like Yokohama was more of a race of like, oh my God, it worked. It was like we pulled it off. It kind of happened, you know. And then as races went through the season, you know, we went through a season of exploration, not execution. That's kind of how we termed it. And that was more of a case of trying to learn what we need to do to be the best we can be, basically. And so that meant taking risk. So there were certain races we did through the season, I'm not going to go into too much detail, that were not even about winning. They were about pushing yourself and pushing and seeing what effect you can have on other people, and then see what the outcome is. And then that's how you get to read the race, because then in the future, when it really, really counts, i.e. in an Olympic selection process or something similar, then we can use those tools to affect what we need to affect and get the result we need. So Taylor was phenomenal at that. Like it's interesting because you've interviewed her and other people have, and some of the things that I say, she'll say them in the interview, and I'm like, and that's the point for me where I'm like, okay, this is sinking in. This is amazing. Like that's the point where I'm like, oh my God, this is great satisfaction. This is where I get the satisfaction. Don't get me wrong, I want people to win and achieve their goals, but when you see you can have a positive effect on an individual, both in their sport, but as a person, how they think, and they're like developing themselves, like that's next level for me. I think that's what I really, really like. So yeah, that happened a lot. But going through the reviews afterwards and then seeing things like there's opportunities for Taylor Knibb, for example. There was one race back in 2016 World Championships in Cozumel when she was a junior, and it started young for her. So there was, she'd actually come out of the water quite far back. I think she told me afterwards, because I just felt like laying on the I just felt like stopping and laying on the tarmac at that point and just quitting, because I was like 45 seconds down from the lead, which is not where she should have been. But she kept going, right? So she got on the bike, she caught up with the lead pack, eventually drove through, and then pushed the lead pack through attrition, ended up breaking with two other girls. I can't remember who it was. I think one of them was Lisa Turch, and it may have been, I don't know, sure the other one was, but they broke away. And on one of the 180 turns, she kept pushing and kept trying to attack, and she wasn't shaking them. They were staying on. And on one of the 180 turns, and this is obviously thinking about tactics, they came out the 180 turn, she was at the back, the other two girls were in front, and both of them grabbed their water bottle at the same time, and that's when she attacked. So she attacked, broke the elastic band, gone, and that was it. And so, and that's not me. I never taught her to do that. She did it herself. So, but having that tactical ability and that awareness and like taking that opportunity, making an opportunity was for her was early on. So by the time we get to 2021, and things have changed and grown a lot from there. That ability has developed quite a lot, and it's exponentially been so in this autumn, especially. So we're already looking now about this season about exploration. What are we going to do next year? What does the next few years look like? What do I need to change as a coach to be a better coach, to facilitate the things that we've learned? And what does Taylor need to do to be a better athlete? Because even though she's had a fantastic year this year, we want to do better. Going back to my rock analogy, right? Okay, fantastic. Now we got to do better. So it's always moving on, but exploration versus execution. And we're still going to continue that process, I think, for a short while until we get to a point where we're like, okay, now we need to like turn all the knobs and then use some of the stuff we've learned. And
as far as race reviewing, the nature of triathlon is that as a coach, there's absolutely no way you can keep an eye on everything that's going on. So things like the bottle pickup, she would, how would you have known that if she hadn't told you, kind of thing. So yeah,
right.
I can imagine from each of those, it's those are the little things that you're desperate to hear, right? And be like, okay, wow, that's brilliant. That's like to have that presence of thought there, and then you can tell other people if that obviously worked. There's a case study right there.
I think it's going back to the start. I think being a collaborator, like my job as a coach is not to tell an athlete what to do. My job is to work with an athlete and figure out together as a team what are the best things to do. Because one thing I can do is like I can see the reaction to training stimulus and some of the other stuff we do. I don't know how an athlete feels. I don't know what they're thinking. So working together and being a team that way, like a team as an athlete and coach. And I have these relationships with all my athletes. Each one of them is slightly different. And then I have like an all-encompassing set of principles. So we all work together and have a great team culture and push each other and have fun. Like I don't want to do this if this isn't fun. And I love doing this. Like the passion I have for this is phenomenal. And I just love doing it, working with, I'm so lucky. And I know coaches around the world feel the same. I'm great friends with some of the other best coaches around the world. And, having the honor and the kind of the privilege to work with people who have a very similar mindset and you can help them push them to the next level is phenomenal. And I haven't had that since being in the army, because you have the same kind of thing, like everybody's on the same team, working together, team cohesion, you the trust and belief that you have in each other and how you actually operate and the values and standards to push yourself forward to achieve the mission or to achieve a goal is very similar. But my military experience isn't like shouting and, I think people go, oh, do you shout at your athletes? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. My job is to develop like autonomy and, like I said, those having that tactical ability, but more importantly, having self-discipline to do the right thing all the time, every time, no matter what you're doing and where you're at, and having accountability. I think accountability is the biggest one. For me, even as a coach, you have to be accountable too. And I think having those principles, those two especially, are really key prerequisites to people who are successful, like not just in sport, but in the military, in business, and in sport.
And it's having athletes like Taylor come on board. You mentioned the podcast we did with her, and that was one of those great chats where she was very sort of open and honest, and I think had only just joined you and was saying, that bit of how she was fitting into the group, and obviously felt she was perhaps like almost a bit overexcited to be there and kind of firing questions and and it's like, it was a very kind of amusing and honest way that she was kind of reflecting on those first few weeks and months. But you have someone like her come into the group or into your sphere, and then you have that then is another impetus for you, right, as a coach. That pushes you on. That's asking new questions, as well as it's not about you just asking your athletes questions, is it? Every time presumably someone new comes in, whether it's Ran Sajiv or Edda or then that gives you another thing to think about, to work on.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because Taylor is very open and very good at kind of like externalizing how she feels and like what she's thinking, like easy. She's quite easy to read. I mean, for me, she's easy to read. I think she'll tell you that too. But it's interesting because some of the quietest athletes have, like Sandra Dode, for example, is one of those people who, like, she's I think she's like the funniest athlete, one of the funniest athletes I've got, because she'll come out with one-liners and like, where did that come from? Like, and she's just like amazing. Like, and yeah, like there is definitely something from everybody. Taylor's one of those people who's actually very outgoing, and but I think, in all honesty, I think she's actually kind of an introvert, but it's just her way of, like, expressing herself in a public environment. I think she's, some athletes struggle with it, and I think she's doing she's doing a fantastic job. But other people who, like, going back to Sandra, who's like really normally quite quiet, but actually very smart, very hardworking, has exactly the same work ethic as somebody like Taylor. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see where she goes, actually. And yeah, it's interesting. Like, everybody's different. Everyone's got different ways of, different personalities, different characteristics. Another reason why this is just such an awesome job to have. You get to work with all sorts of people, and especially when you put them all together, because everybody learns off each other too. Like, it makes it fun when somebody's like cracking a really funny joke. But at the end of the day, when we do work. When it's time to kind of chill and relax, we identify the differences.
Yeah. And all of those things must have been tested sort of to the fullest through the last 2 years as well. And, with the COVID difficulty, as well as the Tokyo postponement and various athletes being injured and so on. So there is that, obviously, that those times where your job is almost just like morale boosting, has to take over everything else, is there as well? Like, there must have been some tricky times if you've, say, got 2 or 3 athletes that are maybe not firing, and you can't quite figure out why, or they've got a tweaked something, and how do you find yourself responding in those situations?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the last 2 years has been a challenge for everybody, and the postponement of Tokyo actually changed the dynamic, not just of the race, but who actually raced the race, because there was people who probably would have been selected. For example, Matt McElroy, he didn't get selected for the games as an individual. He actually went there as a reserve. And should the games have happened in 2020, I think he would have been selected. I think he actually picked up an injury, some biomechanical misalignment, which kind of took him out the fray for a while. So he wasn't back up to full fitness by the time we got back to racing fully, and therefore showcasing his capability, which we've worked through quite well. And I'm looking forward to 2022 for Matt. And yeah, that was a challenge, so, and other people like Taylor Knibb, for example, wasn't in a position to qualify for the games if Tokyo would have happened in 2020. So it's interesting how it all flips around, and people who look like a dead cert don't go, and people who like probably were not on the radar crushed it just because of time and what's happened in the last 2 years. That has been an interesting thing to manage, because 2 things there. You've got like the excitement and euphoria of people reaching their goals, and you've got other people who are disappointed because something's happened, and it's a roadblock, and we look at it as if it's a bump in the road. At the end of the day, there's always another triathlon, there's always another race, there's another Olympics. I know that another Olympics is 4 years apart, or in this case 3 years. It is a big thing, but depending on how much they want to achieve those goals, then they can sometimes push through it, but it is difficult. Ultimately, going back to what we talked about earlier about reaching those goals, and then even though you've reached them, you're not satisfied, you're still pushing forward and to get better and better. You can find new goals. You don't always have to be, the ultimate goal might be to win an Olympic medal or something similar, be a world champion or whatever it is. It could be something as simple as just getting on a World Cup podium for some people. And so as long as you can, I think having the flexibility, I think another thing we talked about earlier, something I still instill in people, is because you never know what's going to happen. Like we have a saying in the army, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So as soon as you can plan with, they call it military precision. There's no such thing as military precision, because as soon as something happens, it all goes out the window and you have to make changes. And it's like having that ability to be flexible and work on the fly and and move through these problems is kind of what gives people the strength to actually push forward. So the last 2 years has been definitely difficult. But I think we've capitalized on it. We've been positive about it. And we've made it into an opportunity. And I think that's the right way of going about anything when you're faced with something as catastrophic as what's really been happening to the world. And I think as a group and as a team, we're a training group, but we have team principles, because I think that's important. I think teams are far more, even though this is an individual sport, we pride ourselves on working as a team, because then we all kind of like help each other and move through this as a team and enjoy the process. But yeah, it's definitely been difficult. My job really has been completely about realigning and setting new goals when things have changed, and when people have had problems, for example, like Matt with his the biomechanical problem that he had. It's like working through those problems with him and being there for him and helping him through that process. Like, my job is not just to deliver training peaks, training prescriptions, or whatever method I'm using at the time. It is absolutely to be, in support of what the athlete's needs are, and be flexible with that. So I have to be flexible too.
I wonder if for Matt, do you think it made it a little, or maybe Eli as well, a little easier to swallow not being there, seeing Kevin smash it out of the park in Tokyo and do better than, even by his own admission, he probably, that he left very happy. And you think, well, if you're going to give if your spot, or the spot is going to someone else, then that's kind of what you want to see, would you say?
I don't think anybody wants to not be there after there being their goal. So it was definitely hard for Matt. I also had, so at the time I was coaching, I coached Eli Hemming and Matt McElroy at the time, and Morgan Pearson would like come in and do swims with us for key swims, and Kevin actually did a couple of camps with us early on, and mainly just did swim work. So we worked together. They're all friends, and it definitely makes it really hard. And it was hard on Matt and Kevin, I think, because they both, one was selected and one wasn't. They're both kind of working together on sessions here and there, and when we go to races, they were like living in the same accommodation in places like Argentina, etc. So it's hard when you have those friendships and something like that happens and one gets selected and the other one doesn't. And we were obviously fighting for the third spot for Team USA, and I think it turned out in Watoku. Actually, there were some races that happened before that actually kind of like indicated how it would go. Eli unfortunately hurt his foot a couple of weeks before Watoku, and he needed to achieve a certain amount of points to secure that third spot for America, and Australia scooped it up instead. So that kind of like changed everything, because at that point we thought, yeah, we're good, we're all good, everyone's going together, it's not a drama. And then that happened. It was kind of hard for everybody, and it took a bit of time, I think, for people to go, oh, well, I thought I was going to go to the Olympic Games, it was looking really good, and now I'm not going. And it's a big deal, and it's a lot for me to. My job really is to be the rock again and just help people through it and give people other things to focus on. And Matt did a fantastic job of that. I think at first it was hard. It was probably hard for Kevin too, but Kevin went there and did a fantastic job. He went there and had an amazing result for him. He had such a breakthrough, and I'm really happy for him. I think that's fantastic. And I think Matt's happy for him too. So yeah, it's definitely hard. And sometimes you've got to put aside your personal goals and your personal ambitions and just, be happy for the team. And Team USA did a great job, and Kevin did a great job, and Matt's turn will come. So it's all swings and roundabouts, right? So yeah, hard, but you got to get through it. I mean, it's life; these things happen, right? So being got to be flexible.
And then again, like, there's no one size fits all particularly for that kind of thing. For someone who doesn't make it to the games, someone who does make it to the games doesn't quite achieve what they would have wanted, and that other kind of flatness that you would experience, and whether it's right, let's get straight back to the next race, or actually you need a bit of a break, or that is very much down to that individual, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting because some athletes are relentless, and you have to hold them back and go, no, we have to be, let's take this one step at a time. Taylor Knibb is one of those people you have to kind of like rein in, but I think that's part of the reason why she's successful, is because she's got this like this massive desire and thrust to push herself, and she likes to compete. She likes to race. She wants to race against the best people, and she wants to be able to test herself. And I think it's amazing. Like, there's not many people who do that. So there is in our sport, there is plenty, but generally in life there is not. So it's definitely something special. And it's the same with Matt and other people I've coached too. Kirsten Casper was another one this last year who actually did a fantastic job of, she'd been coming back from injury. She came to me, I think it was November last year, and she did a great job of getting back in there and trying to put herself back in the fight, and phenomenal resiliency, and fantastic. So yeah, everybody is different, how they operate, and you know, the tools that they have, the tools that they bring, and the tools that I help develop, like all together, can create some fantastic experiences.
And as someone who will have set herself a huge target, an ambitious target for Tokyo, and had started the year so well, how was, and you said as someone that you can read quite well, how was Taylor after the games? Presumably, you know, that was not a finish that she would have dreamt of, and how was that, those first conversations? How was her immediate reaction?
Oh, it's definitely an interesting question, because it was kind of mixed, because obviously Team USA took a silver medal in the relay, and she played a fantastic part in that, and she's really happy about that. But I think, you know, her individual aspirations and goals, she wanted to obviously be a key member of the team. That was a huge part of her goal process. That was something that was really important to her. She wanted to contribute to the team, but she also had her own desires of you know, having the best performance that she can have actually in the individual race. Excuse me. And that didn't plan out as we would have liked. I think the weather had a massive effect on a lot of people, and I think there were some things happened in the swim. She got caught behind certain people, and just didn't come out on the swim where she needed to be, I think, to actually have the ability to affect the battle. And then I think it was kind of like a case of survival in the race, of not crashing and not going down because of the rain, etc. And I think that's far more important, because I think the long goal then is like, okay, I'm not in the position I wanted to be in, you know, and I'm kind of like talking from my perspective, not hers, but I think her aim then was like, okay, I need to have an effect on the relay, like, and me going down right now on the bike, pushing myself and trying to catch up is probably not going to be the best way to do that. So there is an element of like being bold and taking that risk to the point of what is the cost, you know, benefit to the team at the end of the day. And I think she heavily wanted to support Team USA as well as a personal goal. So yeah, she was very happy to win a medal and be part of that team thing. I think she learned a lot from the whole experience, and walked away from there, like, because the Olympic Games is a completely different race. It's not like a World Series race. There are so many other things involved. You know, you walk into the Olympic Village, and it's like walking into the Super Bowl, and it's just, the Super Bowl is full of athletes that you see on the TV from different sports all over the world, and you're bumping into them all the time. Like, it's like, oh my God, I'm just starstruck. So there's that, plus the fact that the enormity of it, how big it is, you know, there's a lot of other factors that have an effect. And I think sometimes people do a really good job of like lapping it up and using that to give them strength to move forward. And other people, I think it can be overwhelming. So, and I think in some of my athletes who went to the games, I think they used it for strength, and other people, it was like, wow, this is a lot. And I think they learn a lot from that. So moving on from that, actually, from the games, going to the next games in Paris, for some of those people, they're like, okay, I've got to come at this with a different perspective, because this is huge and I want to do better in the race next time.
Yeah, interesting about getting caught in the swim as well. And I guess there was like the pontoon draw was interesting, wasn't it, for her, and like where she ended up. I wondered if that that kind of fed into that difficult position in the swim.
Yeah, that was a discussion we had. So I definitely think it had a little bit potentially, but I think the fact that she took that position, it meant she could swim by herself when she was on her own, and she could actually have her race to start with rather than being around other people. And I think we did the same in in Edmonton actually, and she was on the right hand side. Flora was on the far left. Had Kirsten and Victoria swimming next to each other in the middle, and all 4 of those people met pretty much at the buoy, at the first buoy, almost like pushing ahead. It was an interesting race. And then, whereas the Olympic Games, it didn't work out that way. I'm not sure, there's who knows what's happening in the race. The swim is one of those things where you have to be in control, and you've got to get yourself forward as quickly as possible and sustain. It's not that the tactic is very different in the swim than what it is anywhere else. You pacing and, cornering tactics and everything in the bike and the run are actually very different, I think. And it can have, you can have the most amazing swim and it can set you up, but if you don't, it can, you can have real problems. So maybe the pontoon draw had something to do with it. We're not really sure. I think there's a lot more to it. It depends on who you're next to. It depends on who gets in front of you, how you get around them, the flow of the water, and the distance to the first buoy, etc.
Yeah. And as someone that you said, you have to rein in slightly from there. Her competitive spirit is very clear, and I'm sure she would race absolutely everything that she could possibly do. But so from, I suppose like the different demands of doing the Montreal weekend, which was, a lot of super sprint racing with the elimination format. Then there's the Collins Cup. Then there's her first 70.3 in September, wasn't it? Yeah, and she would be the first person, would she, to throw her hat in the ring and say, right, I want to do that. That looks interesting. I'd like to do that. How do you plot that kind of that route around the calendar for someone who, given half a chance, would just do everything that?
You don't plot. That's the problem as well. So the way the approach is, again, flexibility. We've got to be flexible, but taking opportunity and making opportunity. And so with that series of racing, that wasn't the plan initially, of course. Like that wasn't what we planned to do through the season. We planned on focusing on seeing like the exploration process of seeing what we can do and what effect we can have throughout the rest of the year after the Olympic Games. Excuse me. And then, but when these opportunities, came up, like for example, Boulder 70.3 is in Boulder where we train. It's easy. We know the roads. We know all the turns inside out. Like the familiarity there was easy. And, Taylor was like, okay, what do you think about this? And like previously, all the way back from when she was like 17 years of age, she would be like, hey, I want to do a 70.3. I'm like, not like you can do what you want. Like, it's not my job to tell an athlete what to do. Like, my job is to advise. And I'm like, I don't think that's the best idea. Whereas this time when she asked me, she thought I was going to say no. And I'm like, you know what? Let's have a look at it. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, let's talk through it. Let's see how it can have an effect, and what the consecutive races are looking like. And because Montreal had quite a difficult lockdown process, like hotel rooms, I think we've had that a lot in the season. I think athletes have done really well, federations have done really well managing that and servicing people to make sure that everybody gets what they need. I think it's been like a fantastic effort by everybody to enable the sport to continue. And that was definitely something that like training stimulus in the races that we've got coming up later in the season is something that we don't want to lose too much fitness now. So we could use Boulder 70.3 as a training event, not something I'm a big fan of or promote. So Boulder 70.3, which was the first one, was not designed for her to go and win or to get on the podium or anything like that. It was really just like something that was interesting, something she wanted to do. Let's see what we can do. And then we talked through start to finish the strategy in the swim. We talked about, because she's never done a long course race before. She's on a road bike, like she's taping gels to the top tube, and there's many long course athletes kind of making fun of her because she doesn't have a bento box and all that stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't really matter. We're not
bento box. Jeez.
Yeah, I know it was an interesting concept, but I'm like, okay, no problem. And so we worked around that, and we strategized power numbers on, and it was a collaboration. Actually, this was something where she actually led a lot of it. She was like, okay, I think I should go through this like this. And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. okay, what about this section? I'm like, okay, no, I don't think you should do that. I think you should do this. Or okay, so it's like a collaboration from start to finish on how we're going to execute the race. And then because the race, the run course we actually run on quite a lot for endurance runs and some tempo work, it's kind of a rolling run. So holding pace is a difficult thing to do. So projected paces and outcomes where we weren't sure what was going to happen, but we knew, you know, she wanted to still do well, even though it was a training session. So she actually did a really good job. So I gave her caps and she stuck to them, and she still took third place. So that was pretty good. And, you know, it was good fun. So, but also she come out the other side. Yeah, it's still difficult, still harder, but wasn't completely trashed. So the biggest key then was like regeneration and recovery, and then getting ready for the next race, which was Montreal. So then that became a completely different way of training, because then just think about being imaginative to like how to keep people's, you know, fascia working and flexibility and muscle engagement, etc., within a hotel room environment. So working with a strength coach, like doing run drills in the hotel room with running on the spot and using bands and cords, and like obviously the bike trainer was obviously hugely important there, but having to do that through that period, I think was huge too. So
yeah, I mean, that must have been one of the most challenging things as a coach, knowing that your athletes are basically kind of shut up. And in Edmonton, there were obviously run opportunities, weren't there? But it was very much like big groups going together. This is basically just a leg shakeout. We can't do anything. I mean, not that you would, I suppose, that close to a race be doing anything.
No, like it was really a case because she raced back to back for about 5 weekends, and you know, those were really technically her intensity in training. Everything else was about recovery and keeping the dream alive. Really, that's what that was about. And, you know, we actually lost quite a bit of aerobic endurance by the end because we weren't able to get in the sessions that we needed to kind of sustain that. So by the time we got to 70.3 Worlds in St. George, she was still in great shape, still did well, still took third in Worlds, and but probably was not in optimal shape for that race at all. Like it was really more an opportunity and exploration than it was about the execution and we want to go and win this. It was more about, let's see what we can do, let's see what we can learn, and let's take what we learn and use that to strategize and develop prescriptions for what we do in the future. And, you know, both in physiological terms, but the nutrition was obviously a bigger consideration in that distance of racing, along with the mental approach, because you're racing for a lot longer. And so you've really got to think about what you're doing for a lot longer and not be distracted. So staying focused and also being tactically savvy in such an extended race was also a massive learning thing. And I think it's awesome. Such, you know, you got to keep taking away. It's not just about the position. It's like what you learn within the race and every race that you do. And if I could give advice to any athlete, that's what you need to do, or that's what I suggest you do, is take every opportunity you can, make the very best of it, and walk away with it with things that you've learned. Even if you fail, it's okay to fail. Just learn from it and use that and move forward with it, and use that to actually better yourself in the future.
Did she find that concentrating for that period of time, you know, in a race situation, did she say that was particularly challenging, or was she?
No, actually not. So it was interesting because she would come past me, and I engineered, like, because the way I operate, like, I'm very I want athletes to be in control of their own destiny, including the race. But if I can give information which is going to help them make a tactical decision, then I'm going to do it. So I'm going to put myself, like on a World Series race, for example, I'm nowhere near transition. I'm out on the course. I'm on a hill. I'm in a position where I can actually give information. I've got a board with splits on it, like, to, you know, and I break it into two so that the distance to the people who are in front, the people to the distance in back, or whatever else. And I know other teams use letters and numbers for team players in there, so their athletes can react accordingly too. So that's what I did on that course. Is I went out and tried to figure out, and the logistics for me was obviously a lot more difficult, where I needed to be on the course, and then where I could leapfrog along the course to keep giving that information. And so I actually saw her about 4 or 5 times on the bike, which was a challenge because I had to get around and there's road closures and I had to, you know, cops were. Yeah, no, I mean, it would take me forever because it's like, you know, it's like 30 miles from one side to the next. So I was driving around. So I did a recon a few days before and went through, drove the course a few times. So obviously know the course. I've had athletes race that before previously, like Jeannie Metzler did it earlier. She actually raced the same race with Taylor at Worlds. She took second. So getting to know that and then moving around so I can put myself in a position to pass on that information. When she's coming past me every time, she was on and she was like shouting she was requesting information herself, like, what is this? Where is this person, etc. So she didn't switch off. I wasn't surprised. She's definitely the type of person who doesn't switch off, but she was constantly like trying to be situationally aware. I think it's one of her strengths, for sure. Yeah. So,
yeah. Oh, okay. And I really didn't want this to become the Taylor show by any stretch, but just to close out on that, because I do. She, the way she bikes, and it was particularly noticeable in a sense, even though it was much shorter course in Montreal, her just kind of relentless ability to maintain a pace. And is that partly her own racing ability, that kind of attritional riding, but is it also very much, is she particularly good at being able to accelerate in places that other people aren't so good at? Or I don't want you to give away too many secrets here, but at the same time, if you could give away all the secrets, that would be great.
I mean, there's no secrets, but the truth is I think even before I started, so my history with Taylor before I started coaching is she used to be part of a junior team called Trident Multisports, based in Florida, but she would represent those as when she was in high school, etc. And then that was actually when she started to realize, I think, that she actually had some bike strength more comparatively to other girls in her peer group. Then I started working with her in the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And that's when she won her first world championship. And then and before that, we actually put her into the fray a little bit, and she raced Montreal World Cup and actually broke away with Flora in that race and took third. I think Flora won. Ashley Gentle took second and Taylor took third. And then we chucked her into Stockholm World Series race. Amazing. I love that race. A great place. And that was just before the Rio Olympics. So she was more mindful about taking people out than she was about performing well, because they were all going to the Olympics. She wasn't. That's the type of person she is, just thinking about other people all the time. And then, so it became obvious that she realized that she had something, different. I think there's some physiological differences to other people. She may have longer femurs, so therefore longer levers, something we haven't confirmed yet. But that, and I think the mindset and the prescription of training, she actually, I stopped working with her towards the end of 2017, and she came back to me middle to the end of last year. And so her trajectory in that period of time was like going up, like she was going into it. That was when she raced her first Continental Cup Elite races. I think she did about 5 or 6 of them and won them all, like back to back. So at first she didn't believe. I was like, okay, this is what I want you to do, A, B, and C, and D. And she came past me. I think the first race she did was in Claremont in Florida. She came past me on the bike, and she was like, and we gave her a strategy and we talked through it. And she was like screaming out, Ian, it's working. I'm like, just keep riding. What are you doing? it's just typical Taylor. I'm like, oh my God, just keep going. And it's kind of been that thing, that level of belief in what me and her have achieved, because she stopped working with me in 2017, but she came back and has achieved amazing things since. So she's always had that. There's something she develops herself. My job is just to nurture and help add to that. Her strengths are her strengths. They're like, I'm not taking any credit at all, but I think the collaboration we have in the prescription of training and how she is very critical about that too. Like, I like the fact that she is, and the best athletes are this way. They will ask questions. They want to know why. What is this like? And as soon as you give her that, she's like, okay, that's exactly what she says. Okay, then, and then off she goes and just goes and crushes it. Like, it's phenomenal. So, and I think going back to what we said at the start, like having that belief process is really what's the key here. Something that she lacked for a period of time and has that, and therefore is able to execute. But it's a collaboration. I'm not responsible for her results. She is. Like, my job is to help her and push her forward. And the same with all my athletes. Like, my job is not to, like I'm consistently trying to figure out what is the best for each individual, and I've been very lucky in doing so, and everybody has taken that on board, and we work all really well together and work well together as a team. And it's like phenomenal how many great results we've had, and how it's all worked really well together. And it's not just Taylor. Like, Taylor's just one of those people, and she's a standout this year for sure. So yeah, I think it just epitomizes the way we as coaches and other coaches work very, very, very similar to me. I've really good friends around the world who coach other athletes, and we talk about this. It's an interesting concept.
And Antonio Sirat, you're working with, right? Still,
I haven't worked with Antonio this year.
Right.
So, like, I think as soon as when COVID happened, it was actually very difficult for him. He was one of the guys who couldn't get to the United States. I managed to secure passageway, if you like, for athletes to get into the USA because there's a travel ban. I think that there's communication through Olympic committees, etc., that can help facilitate that. And he was just one of the guys who can get across. So he stayed and worked with a Spanish coach for the rest of 2021.
Right.
Great guy though. Like, the guy's phenomenal. Like, his work ethic, it's very similar to Taylor actually. He's hilarious as well. Like, you get to know him. The guy is hilarious, but like amazing fun to work with. He's so sarcastic. It's brilliant. But yeah, that guy's got an engine, and he is definitely one to watch for the future. Phenomenal person.
I did sort of, there are definite similarities, like you say, with Taylor, and she's obviously breaking in, she's doing, knocking on the door for many years now. But like an incredibly strong USA team of women, and then Antonio there with Mario and Javi and Fernando that have been sort of taking the headlines and probably the spots. But he must be so hungry to make that step now. Javi stepping down, Mario, we don't know quite where he's going to be next season in terms of what races he'll be doing. And
yeah, it's interesting because there's always, and I think COVID and the shifting of the Olympic Games, putting it back another year, has just like opened the door to so many new people that just popped up. Is amazing. We came to some of these races like, who's this athlete? This is amazing. Like, somebody's come out. And I think Spain has got a lot of those athletes up and coming too. So it's going to be really interesting over the next 3 years how the sport is probably going to develop and change. I think that happens after every Olympic Games. Some people will move on to long course, and other people will retire. Other people get jobs within the sport, and it's fantastic, and give back. And yet we get to see new people. Like I'm excited. I've taken on several new people this year, and I'm excited to push them forward between now and Paris and the LA Games.
Yeah. It's the A&R sort of side of it, something that you quite get a kick out of. Is it quite stressful, kind of thinking about, presumably there's a lot of eyes on a lot of athletes coming through, and you obviously want to work with the people that I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. So
I think this is common for most coaches. I don't know any coach that actually goes out actively recruiting athletes. That just doesn't happen. I think when you're dealing with up and coming juniors, U23 athletes maybe, but generally that's because you work with other development coaches and goes that way. But at this level, not really. I think people want to, they see how you operate, they see what you do, they see how your athletes operate, and they all know each other, so they all talk. And I have a lot of athletes coming over because of many different reasons, whether it's because I think one of the interesting things about the relationship you have, with an athlete and how you develop that. Like, that's what I love, is developing that relationship with an athlete and like getting them to believe in me, and then enabling them to actually achieve these massive goals. Like, and some of them like unattainable, or you think so, and then all of a sudden you're like, they're actually smashing it. It's phenomenal. So having that, I think, is a big thing with like the rotation of it. New people come along, and my job is to continue supporting and helping athletes in the direction that they want to go.
And it's not just obviously the new ones coming through. I mean, Flora was working with you on specifically on swim sessions, wasn't she? That was something that obviously has, I think, she would say has improved leaps and bounds. Like, she's had a really good season in the water. And I don't know, any insights from working with her, from bringing her into a group? I can imagine her work ethic is probably through the roof, the sort of person you would really want to expose young athletes to as well, is she?
Yeah. So Flora's coached by Nate Wilson, really nice guy. He coaches a professional cycling team too, but I know she also works with other coaches too. She's very individualized, has a run specialist. I think she works with Bobby McGee, very, very talented run coach, and with a massive background, and she puts herself and sets the conditions for her own success. So she puts herself and surrounds herself with people who are going to give her the best. I mean, she also has an amazing husband, Dan, who supports her massively. And, I don't have a lot to do with Flora's training at all outside of like her swimming with us. But yeah, she's absolutely been phenomenal in the pool, and she's just a normal person. I think they all are at the end of the day. I think it's interesting. You just have a chat with her and you just forget how successful she is. And you're like, wow, she's just such a normal, nice, giving, wonderful person to be around, and great to be, joining, our group for swims. And like, it's interesting because before the swims and after the swims, there's like little conversations and stuff like that. That's kind of where you pick up on a lot of things, especially for me, on like how athletes are doing. Like, I like to communicate and talk and engage, and like Flora's conversations are always engaging. So yeah, she's got some good snippets. So, but she's hilarious, like, as well. So she's such good fun to be around, and you can see that with the people she works with too, and who she actually has working with her, all good people. So, and I think it's really important. You've got to build an environment and surround yourself with good people who will push you, but also make it fun. And she's definitely one of the people to do that. It's actually interesting because after the kind of the races finished, we had in the pool, I had basically like 4 or 5 Olympians at the time, like Taylor Spivey, Taylor Knibb, and Flora Duffy, all 3 of them on the championship podium for the women. And I didn't even realize until afterwards. Like, I don't know, I'm just, and Taylor was just dropping in. She's coached by Paolo Souza, another great coach, who coaches like a big team with Valerie Balthemi and a bunch of others. And so she come in as a guest athlete too. So we have a lot of people dropping in to our program, which is great. I'm very open to that, as long as people operate at the right level. And yeah, it's fantastic. Like, there's nothing better. Like, you can go through it and you deliver these workouts and they walk away and you're having a good time. You're affecting people's performances and trajectories for the future. And you're just playing a very, 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 very small part in what they're doing. But it's a pleasure to do that. And so, yeah, I'm honored to get given those opportunities. And I don't take any credit for that. Like, what they do is what athletes do is what they do. My job is to help facilitate that as best I can.
Yeah. But the buzz for delivering a tough session and see them all finish it and taking something out of it and their own kind of buzz at pushing themselves, I can imagine that is a great feeling. And bringing people in and being able to use that to help keep sessions fresh, right? That must be a challenge in itself. It's, we're back in the pool again, and the last thing you want is people to be like, oh God, yeah, here we are again. So
yeah,
we're ticking into December. Is this the sort of time? What does December look like for you? Is this a time where you can take a step back and start to have a few more like lateral thoughts, plan for the future a little bit, and be like, right, just let the mind wander into things that you can bring in, that I guess the kind of the grind, the hamster wheel doesn't let you do?
Yeah, so they say there's an off season, but there's no such thing as an off season. I've been trying to give myself an off season for the last 7 years. It's not happened. This year I achieved it, believe it or not. And I think actually COVID helped me do that too. So I managed to get some time for myself. But what it did allow me to do is I had 2 weeks basically of really no comms with athletes, and that gave me time to actually go back and do like my end of season reviews. So we do reviews all the way through the season so we can keep our finger on the pulse and remain accountable. But it enabled me to have time to kind of like think about how I can enhance my operational capability next year and moving forward, and what we've learned in this exploration process. So December really kind of, everybody is kind of like finished their season in a different place, because different athletes have raced different races. And so they've done an unload period and a regeneration kind of period already. I have like a general preparation and a specific preparation, gen prep and spec prep periods. We're currently in the gen prep period. So now we're just generically preparing ourselves for the coming year ahead. So over the next few weeks, we'll do some specific analysis of each individual. So for example, I'll bring in my swim specialist, Gennadius, to do some video and using accelerometers to figure out points in their stroke which need to be changed. And then my job is to collaborate with him. And swimming is one of those things that I don't come from a background of swimming. So I've had to learn to be better. And so I've sought out the best people to do that. And now we have some of the fastest swimmers in the world. So it pays dividends to actually do that as a coach. And so we'll be doing that'll be the first week really. So we'll be doing loads of swim analysis, breaking things down, developing new drill sets, which then get implemented in the training sessions that we have in the first quarter. And then they get analyzed again, and then we keep changing. So whenever we do a swim, for example, the first part of that, the warm up, they're on their own. So they get in the pool at a specific time, and then they go and they work through that and have very specific swim warm-ups that they're very familiar with. And I repeat that because repetition creates belief. So, and it also gives them a consistent touch point of knowing where they're at in terms of like, okay, I'm feeling really good today. Okay, I know what to expect of how I'm going to perform in the swim. And if they don't, then obviously my job is to help them develop and change that and be bold. And so we'll do that, and that will formulate what we do in the first quarter in terms of like swim transformation, if we need to transform, or like specific focuses. And my swim, especially technical work, is not conventional. So the stuff I do, and it's how I operate as a coach, I don't just take what other people have done, because tradition paralyzes performance, and my job is to innovate. And so I'm constantly looking at new ways of developing my swimming, cycling, and running strategies, and everything else in between, the other modalities that we have to deal with. And so I'll think about the best ways of doing that, and they're not always what you read in a book or what you would commonly know. And swimming is definitely one of those things. Like my swim drills are not the normal thing. So I work with Gennadius Silvakis to do the analysis, and I take that information and then figure out exactly what I need to change in the stroke to make things better. I mean, it's worked really, really well so far for those people who actually repetitively go through that process and repeat those drills. And then we'll do the same for the bike. So we'll go through various things that I don't work on just, I'm looking at what the demands of competition are. I'm lucky to have like power profiles from many athletes over the years, and knowing exactly what people need and developing that, but also in terms of like handling, etc. These are always things that we need to be better at. So there's a skills element to it, which continues through the first part of the season. It's definitely something that some of my athletes have like really, really done well with. I think we'll do some gravel bike training. So we'll be doing like group rides on gravel bikes on trails. Believe it or not, they're quite wide trails, like gravel trails. So it's not like on a single track, and actually do a ton of other stuff to be more situationally aware, etc. So putting different methods in there, which enable us to train when it's, the weather's not great, but also have some really, really positive effects. And then we'll do the same with running. So I'll do my own analysis. I may bring in one or two of my specialists to also look at people's runs. And then there'll also be like other analyses too, through like my strength trainers, to really kind of like identify strengths and weaknesses and areas of opportunity that we can actually strengthen people. And having that really functional, I use Erin Carson out of Rally Sport Boulder, who's fantastic, because I will actually go in and do the strength sessions sometimes with the athletes, because I want an understanding of what she's doing. And this is really interesting, because I'm like, oh my God, like this exercise here actually works on the top part of the pedal stroke. Fantastic. Like, so having somebody and working with people who are thinking next level and also not conventional, like actually thinking outside the box and trying to figure out how to make people better, is hugely important. And so I have like an array of those people for advisors, people that my athletes don't get to talk to, people that I talk to, and who are kind of resources for me from around the world. And then I have people who work directly with my athletes, which are obviously service providers. So we'll do that, and then go through those processes through December, and that'll continue on until January. And then we just start really experimenting a little bit. I mean, we're still in that phase where it's such early part of the quad. that we can actually do that. And as we go into next year, really the emphasis is going to be on working backwards on the timeline from the first races, and the races start quite late next year, apart from Miyazaki World Cup, which is like normal time really, but not for Miyazaki, but for the first race. And then figuring out who's doing what and how we're actually going to implement things. So this gives us an opportunity to kind of extend our preparation. So with the stuff that we've learned this year, and everyone's been through this exploration process, and I've given people goals, and like giving somebody a strategy in a race, like I gave athletes, okay, in this race, all I want you to do is in terms of a tactic, something we've worked on is I want you to be in a certain position on the bike, and then I want you to push wide, I want you to push forward, and I want you to see what happens. Just experimenting with that and just giving people several of those in a race to see what happens. And sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't, but you learn a lot. And those are the things that we'll take away and move forward into next year and start to actually develop within more races and training events. So hope that answered your question. That was quite a long one.
That does not sound like an off season. You're quite right.
So, yeah.
Layer upon layer. It's fascinating stuff, I've got to say. I mean, you sort of think, all right, I've prepared some questions here, and I think I've covered all bases, and then these layers keep revealing, and
I can talk about this stuff all day. It's a problem I have. So I have to figure out how to. I think the thing I need to work on as a coach is stop talking. I think. Yeah, so, I don't know what it is. Like, it's the passion. Like, I love what I do. And like you say, you just open up more layers. And as soon as you learn something else about an athlete or yourself as a coach, like, oh my God, like, where can I take this? Where's this going to go? Where's this going to lead to? And I think that relentless persistence and drive to be better and to figure out new things and not be constrained by tradition or ego because they're paralyzed with performance can just open up the world to all sorts of opportunities and potential. Like, it's phenomenal. That's why coaching and sport is just such an amazing thing. Like, so many things you can do. People get to work with, like, it is phenomenal. And
it's the most positive rabbit hole you could possibly go down. If you think getting lost in YouTube for half an hour and you're just scrolling through absolute crap, and then actually, there are things like coaching that, if you want to just dive straight into. So, okay, it's nearly the season to sort of overeat and make unrealistic fitness plans. So given we've just covered high performance, pretty comprehensively, I think, as far as amateurish athletes, triathletes wanting to, this is slightly selfish from my point of view here as well, but if there was,
you want me to hire you? You want to hire me as a coach, Doug? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're trying to
do? This is where I was going. Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
I'm a blank canvas. Just the one that's been left in the garage for too long. But could you have a couple of universal useful tips for like, be it for ideally for a swim, bike and run, or whether it's a mental thing or just something like a basic that people who aren't aspiring Olympians should bring into their racing?
Yeah, number one, have fun with what you're doing, because that's going to bring a new level of motivation. And motivation, you hear all sorts of hashtags like motivation is fake, like self-discipline is a thing. But if you have fun, then you're going to get yourself out the door. And if you're getting yourself out of the door, that means you're going to drive consistency. And if you've got consistency, then you're going to show, you're going to have potentially more, you're going to continue to grow, right? So if you're being consistent, you're going to see those changes in yourself, like mentally and physically moving forward. And then you're just really going to enjoy the process. So I think have fun, be consistent. I think those are the biggest two things I think that you can do. Yeah.
That's funny. I can't remember what it was. I had some sort of random question about like the fact that I just spent quite a lot of money on some headphones that I can wear while running, but my actual running shoes are a piece of crap and, worth about 15 quid. But the headphones make me go out and do it. And, the trainers are what they are. So that ties in. All right. I'm almost there.
I mean, that's a huge part of it's a huge part of it, if you're turning up, if my athletes are turning up to my session, for example, I mean, this is across the board. And they're turning up going, oh, the drudgery. You know, people talk about the grind. I hate that phrase. Like, oh, it's the grind. No, the grind is miserable. Like, we don't want the grind. We want to go out there. We want to have fun, and we want to crush it. And we want every don't get me wrong. Some days are hard. Some days are miserable. And some days you just got to push through. And that's where you've got to make it fun. If you keep making it fun, then you're going to enjoy the process. If you enjoy the process, you're going to see the benefits. If you see the benefits, you're actually going to feel like you're actually achieving something, you know, and then you're going to surprise yourself, you know, because the human body is amazing and it can adapt to anything you throw at it pretty much, you know, and people have different genetic dispositions, of course, but like the truth is consistency, hard work, enjoying the process is a healthy thing to do. Sport is awesome. You should engage.
Yeah. Brilliant. Is there something from your, you know, when you say tradition paralyzes performance, or, you know, you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and so on, these are there things like that, I don't know, that is there a specific, just to close things out nicely, like from your military background, something that, you know, you think gives you a very unique perspective on what you do, and something that you learn that you just try and instill in your athletes as well, specifically from your time in the military?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a complex question. I spent 16 years working in an environment, mainly in a reconnaissance unit and other jobs, and deploying to various countries around the world, from Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, plus all sorts of other places too. And in those environments, I think humility, because anything can happen and you have to deal with it and move forward and, you know, remain flexible. I think some of the things I've said today are because of what's happened through my military experience, spending that amount of time, you know, deployed or like engaging and developing, you know, soldiers, you know. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything I can say like a lot of the sayings I've said actually come from that background, I think, and they cross-pollinate through business and sport, like I mentioned before. But I think really, like, people have goals and they get anxious about things, and I generally don't. It's not that I'm a psychopath or anything. I think it's just because I've been through experiences which have been you're laughing, but I think it's because I've been through experiences which have taken a lot of resolve, and I've had to stay in control at that point in time, because things are a lot more serious than they are in sport. So, and that's why I'm here doing this, because I spent a lot of my time enforcing foreign policy, if you like, around the world, and, you know, and other sorts of jobs I did. But this gives me an opportunity to give back. And I think when I look back at my experience in the military, and I think about what I've done, where I've been, but more importantly, and this is the key here, is the people I worked with and how those interactions developed and worked, and that teamwork and the emphasis behind following good values and standards and good operating procedures, and having, you know, doing the right thing all the time, every time, that epitomizes what I do now as a coach. So, you know, my job wasn't like a drill sergeant shouting at people and all that kind of stuff. It was like you put in a position on your own with autonomy to get a job done, because it's an important job. You know, I don't want to go too much into that, but that has a massive effect on how I coach. And I think that's what I try and develop in athletes. And I see actually those leadership principles developing in athletes that I coach, not in a military sense, but in the same kind of, they could quite easily slot into that job in a specialized environment and actually crush it quite well. I think there's a lot of things that cross-pollinate between really like high functioning military units and elite athletes, and, you know, really successful entrepreneurs in business.
Elite business, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fascinating. Well, Ian, it's been very interesting, I must say. Thanks ever so much for coming on. I'll share my calendar for the next couple of months if you can find a little window for a week or two.
You're welcome to come out and join us. You know, like, I'm a big proponent of like sharing what we do. Like, I don't think what we do is special. I think we just live by, you know, some of the things we've talked about today, really, and just, you know, enabling things to happen. And I think that's what makes it so worthwhile, so satisfying, and for everybody involved. And, you know, we're a team, and we work together, and we're we're having a good time, but we're achieving things. We're like, I'm relentless. No matter the stuff we've talked about, I'm relentless in performance outcomes. So I want to make sure that people achieve their goals. Like, that is what I will live and breathe and help push people towards. And I think most coaches who do what I do operate the same. They have the same ethos. They may not operate in the same manner, but they most definitely like have the same kind of thing, pushing athletes to achieve their potential goals.
Yep. Brilliant. Well, look forward to seeing you and them achieving them next year. Seeing you course side somewhere holding up your board and Taylor whizzing past going, it's working.
I've got so many stories like that. It's unreal. Like, oh my God. Oh, it's so funny. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Doug, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I will see you out there for sure.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Cheers, Ian. Take care.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.